Welcome to The Bridge, Your Health, Your Voice, the official podcast for the University of Maryland, Baltimore School of Pharmacy Patients Program. The Patients Program is the bridge between the community and researchers. The Patients Program created this partnership to help researchers listen to the community's voice in order to build a bridge to an effective learning healthcare community. Here's your host, Rodney Elliott.
I will be speaking with Dr. Anthony Yanni. He is the Senior Vice President and Head of Patient-Centricity. What is patient-centricity? What is Astellas? That's what our listeners and viewers are probably asking themselves. They're a global life science company committed to turning innovative science into value for patients. They provide transformative therapies in disease areas that include oncology, ophthalmology, urology, immunology, and women's health. Through their research and development programs, they are pioneering new healthcare solutions for diseases with high unmet medical need. What I got out of that is, and in comparison to the patients program where the synergies lies, is patient-centeredness. They call it patient-centricity. We want to make sure that the patients are heard, listened to, and understood, and more or less empowered to make decisions on their health. So, without further ado, I want to introduce my guest to Dr. Anthony Yanni. How are you, Dr. Yanni?
I'm great, Rodney. Thanks so much. Love being here. First, let's keep this very casual. Please call me Anthony. But it is great to be here. I really enjoyed my time at the University of Maryland with the students and the faculty. It was such a great day. I hope to do it again. It was really enjoyable.
Yes, in our email exchange between Dr. Mullins, he also noted in there that you guys have to catch up. So if you say you want to come back and speak, whether it's a lecture or talking to the group, Dr. Mullins will hold you to that. So be careful what you ask for.
So I'll start with your opening statement about the commonalities between what we do at Astellas and what you're doing at the University of Maryland in educating the next generation of scientists and leaders. I think you're right. The commonality, put simply, is the patient. I work in pharma prior to joining Astellas, which is a pharmaceutical company dedicated, as you said, to developing new solutions for patients. I was a clinical practitioner. I was an internist, treating patients for 12 or 13 years in the office, in the hospital, critical care, emergency sort of care in the office. Following that, I was chief medical officer of a hospital system. So I've been very fortunate to have seen healthcare from a lot of different perspectives, across the table in bed from patients, administrating large systems, and in the development of solutions. And the one thing that is critical in all of those experiences, for me, what I learned is that the patient has so much to offer in their own care, in their own direction. And when I joined pharma, I realized that there are so many smart people working very hard to develop solutions for patients. Their whole careers are spent dedicated to this idea of how can I help? And yet there was no patient interaction in the process, or minimal. So my work really is changing that dynamic to create opportunities for patients to provide their perspective, for physicians to provide their perspective, from discovery when scientists are thinking about solutions all the way to delivery. How do we get those solutions to patients in the most reasonable way? And so we could talk a little bit about each of those things, but that's the commonality that I see, is that the focus is on the patient.
Yes, that was glaring in your conversation, and even more when I did a deeper dive online looking at your webpage. And even in this conversation we started off today, I addressed you as Dr. Yanni, and you wanted this conversation to be more relaxed and more, just kind of casual conversation. So I can call you Anthony. That's great. One thing we also realize here at the Patients Program is when we have meetings or group sessions with some of our community members and our fellow researchers, that we ask that the researchers be, if they're comfortable with being called by their first name. Because sometimes in the community, when we're dealing with community members and they don't have a degree or they may have not have studied at a university, they don't have the letters behind their name, at times that possibly could be a little intimidating. But what I share with them as the engagement specialist is letting them know that Dr. Yanni, who has degrees behind his name and letters, that's fantastic. He studied. He's the expert of that field. You, Miss Johnson, in the community are expert in your field from your lived experiences. So you being a caregiver for 10 years, 20 years, you being someone who's had to deal and maintain with a particular health issue, you're an expert in that. So those lived experiences, we want to hear about those in a safe environment, right? So you are, or we all are on the same level playing field. So that kind of leads me to my next question. Can you share some specific examples about how your group at Astellas has involved patients and caregivers in the development of some new therapies or maybe new clinical trials?
To go back a step, I think it's important to understand what is patient centricity. So when I started that at Astellas in 2019, prior to that, I was working in this space for about 14 years. But when I started at Astellas, I thought it was important that we have common definitions so everyone understands what it is we're trying to do, because these terms can be used so many different ways. So for me, patient centricity is two things in pharma. There's an operational definition. It's the active integration of the patient perspective in all solutions and in decisions leading to all solutions. And there's a cultural definition, and that is the conscious awareness of the patient in all activities, in every role, every day, in every geography for every person. So with the cultural piece being the foundation, everybody who goes to work in the morning understands that I'm here because I am providing a solution, my component for a solution for patients, whether you're in HR, finance, a research lab, or in a clinical trial space. Your participation is critical, and everyone has to be on that same wavelength for us to actually bring solutions to patients in the most efficient way. But then the question is, well, how do we do that? Well, what we did is created 5 separate teams. Each team has a highly specialized role to help each segment of the classic research and development and delivery space deliver their component with the patient. So I have a team now that works with researchers. And with those researchers, we bring the exam room into the research labs so that they can see what the potential is in the real world for their scientific innovation. We have teams that work looking at the real world setting of patients in their environment. What are the things that are barriers for patients to access care, to get the services that they need? What are the associated symptoms along with their disease we're trying to create solutions for? Fatigue, insomnia, anxiety, lethargy, whatever that may be. We need to understand that if we're going to transition from treating an illness to caring for a person. So we want to bring that into the organization. We have a team that specializes in behavioral science, understanding the behaviors that interfere with good care and promoting the ones that help deliver good care. Behavior is a huge component of care, and we need to understand it to be part of the solution. And then we have a team that completely focuses in on developing relationships with patient and patient groups all over the world so that we don't have a singularity in our perspectives. We want the most diverse population of folks that we can have in different geographies, different cultures, so we understand the differences in their needs and the gaps in care.
Like that. I like that. And as you were speaking, it kind of reminded me back again to your speech last year in December when you came in and talked about how you have different teams. And that's kind of similar to the patients program as well. Myself, the bridge was thought of by myself and Eric, which on 2 different teams within the patients program, D&I, dissemination and implementation, and you have community engagement. So there's an overlap in some of the work that we do here at the patients program, but it's all about still delivering that message and making sure the information is understood, heard, and if not, they have resources to kind of get back to us. How does Astellas address the diverse needs of the patients from underserved communities in its patient-centric initiatives?
Yeah, so I think that's an important component of how we can understand patients, right? Because patients in Kansas are different than patients in Dubai
Great.
with plain illness, and patients in a big city in New York are different than rural New York. So this idea that you can talk to a single patient in a specific geography or socioeconomic condition and understand everything is just not it's just not the case. But it is equally difficult to say we've captured everything. It's never going to happen. So what we try to do is link the geographies that we're working in as diversely as we can in that context with the diseases and try to get a broad understanding of patients. So for instance, if we're working on a product that's going to be available in Europe and in the US, we try to get patients in both of those geographies in different countries. It's certainly not comprehensive. It's impossible to get every patient everywhere and every diverse population, but we try to do the best we can to understand the patient and their environment as it relates to the condition. In clinical trials, this is a very common discussion in clinical trials. How do we diversify clinical trials, which is critically important because you can't study a population and transfer those learnings to every population. And this has been a challenge for pharma for decades, really. I mean, this has been a discussion from when I started 15 or 20 years ago in pharma. And it's a challenge because diverse populations tend to be in different areas than the populations that we tend to recruit in standard trial sites, right? So you have to put trial sites in areas where the diverse populations exist. And that in and of itself has some barriers that can be overcome, but we have to address it. So we need to be aware of what is the diversity we're looking for. Then we need to make sure we make clinical trials not only available to those populations, but accessible and executable, because you can't expect populations who have no ability to travel 30 miles to a clinical trial site to do so 14 times in the next 6 weeks. It's just not practical. So this whole process has to be rethought out, and it has to be re-executed and re-engineered. And that process, I know at Astellas, we're working hard to try to figure this out, but it hasn't been solved yet broadly across industry.
I had some of those challenges when I first started with the patients program about 7 years ago, and it was a non-clinical project, and we were asking for lived experiences on a particular topic. But again, like you mentioned, this was pre-pandemic, so folks could actually have the opportunity to come out to a recreation center or to a senior home. And one of the challenges was the incentive didn't match the effort that was asked for the client or the patient, so to speak. And we had that conversation with the researchers, let them know that this information is valuable to the community. They want to learn and know about this, but like you said, you can't ask a person in this neighborhood to be able to commute back and forth to the university or to this rec center amount of times without being properly compensated, right? That may seem small to some people, but that can make or break your project. So understanding that is very, very important.
It's important for recruitment, but it's also important for retention.
Retention,
right? Because without retention, you have no clinical trial, right?
Correct.
So it's really important.
Correct. And once that need is met, that's great too, because now the word of mouth is fantastic. So that particular patient can spread the word about their interaction with us and also said researcher. A lot of that comes under health literacy as well too. I know the patients program, we spend a lot of time educating community members and also learning from them as well too, because it's a bi-directional educational tool for us. We don't always think that we know everything or have all the answers and speak directly at our or to our community. We provide opportunities for them to give us feedback. So as far as health literacy is concerned, what role does health literacy play in ensuring patients can effectively participate in their healthcare decisions, and what is Astellas doing to improve health literacy?
Health literacy is critical, right? There's no question. I don't think you'd even get a serious debate from anyone on that topic. Patient centricity works very closely with our medical colleagues, and I think in most pharma companies there should be a collaboration between the entities, whether it be a medical affairs group or whoever creates the content, with patient centricity to bring in the patients early enough to make sure that it's applicable to the exact populations we're trying to target, that it's understandable, it's educational, and that it can be built upon, so that it's not a singular piece of information, but a piece of information that can become part of a building block of education that is very longitudinal. And so we work very closely with our medical colleagues, I think one of the best collaborations we have to help create content that is impactful. And that's the key to it, is that it's impactful.
We worked with some of our researchers, some of our groups and leaders in the community, where we provided or helped them come up with toolkits that they can use that are beneficial to them as they engage with community members, leaders, stakeholders. Because again, when you give folks information that they need, they can have readily available to assist them when they're working with a group, an organization, a university, a business, that helps them out a whole lot in making that exchange of information, I would say, exchange of lived experiences, easy and kind of readily available. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking to Dr. Anthony Yanni, Senior Vice President and Head of Patient Centricity at Astellas, and having a fantastic conversation. And next question kind of goes towards some of the ideas of where you see yourself and your group going, the future. How do you see the future of patient-centered outcomes research evolving, patient centricity evolving, and what information are you most excited? What innovations, are you most excited about?
I think for me, the most important thing regarding patient centricity and its evolution is the idea that we look at it in two separate but very connected pieces. The first is, how do we develop solutions for patients with patients?
Yeah.
And the second is, how do we enhance the delivery system, which University of Maryland program does a great job with in the education space, to create that next generation of leaders? How do we create delivery systems that are patient-centric? And this is not in any way a shameless plug for the book I wrote, but the reason I bring it up is because I address this very specific piece. And honestly, I buy one book and share it among 100 people. I don't care how many are sold. I just want the message to be at least read and debated. And that's the Bandana and A Bluebird: Path to a Patient-Centric Healthcare System. But in that book, I talk very much about the bridge between the creation of solutions with patients and the delivery of solutions for patients is patient centricity or patient focus. So you can call it whatever you want, but at the end of the day, the fully impactful patient centricity programmatic approach is, as I said, creating solutions for patients with patients and transitioning the healthcare delivery system from a system that effectively treats illness to a system that goes back to caring for people. And we've transitioned away from that in many cases to a system that allows for the treatment effectively. The right medicine is delivered, but often patients and their families leave bruised and battered emotionally because of the experience. We need to fix this so that what is delivered is valuable to patients and fills a gap in care, and how it's delivered is in a caring, empathetic way. And only then can we actually say the healthcare system is patient-centric.
Would you say that's one of the challenges that you've been faced with and you and your group have been faced with? And how are you working to overcome that?
Yeah, well, one of the ways is this conversation, right? The reason Daniel, Dr. Mullins and I have had this connectivity is the work you're doing at the University of Maryland in the patients program is on that other side, right? It's how do we educate, which is part of that, right? There's so many pieces to each of these things. I'm talking about it at a 30,000 foot level, but
okay,
how do we bring the students to this idea that, hey, when you're out there, think about it this way. You can, just as we talked about healthcare literacy, we need to create patient-centric literacy. And so I've been asked to talk to medical students and college students, and I'm all in favor of it. I want to do it anywhere I can, because if we can create this next generation who thinks like this, there's no stopping it, right? It's going to happen because they're going to be the future leaders.
I like that, because here at the Patients Program, what we try to do is we want to make sure folks understand the whole Patients Program approach again. And from that 40,000 foot view in the classroom or in your meetings, you can kind of get a sense of it. But when you get down to that 10,000, 5,000 foot view, and you come out with myself and some of our team in the community and, for example, be behind at a health fair, behind a table, talking and engaging with a group, you get a different understanding and a different approach for how folks look at research, how folks look at health education, how folks look at health literacy. And it always kind of brings it home for me when I see an imaginary light bulb, so to speak, go or light up over top of a PharmD student who came out and engaged with me in the communities, because now they're taking what they got from the classroom, taking what they got from the book or maybe even online, and they're applying that in real life situations. Because when you're at these health events, when you're out about in the community, once they see you with a certain organization or a certain group, they're going to ask questions. They're going to challenge you on some things, right? But it's because of their lived experiences.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And so we have lots of fellows that work with us on the patient centricity team. And we do that because my view has always been that, one, we're doing our part to help educate the next group of people entering both the pharma side and the healthcare delivery side. But we also get so many great ideas from the fellows. I mean, it's a uniting process when
There you go.
we do things that we think are really great, and somebody comes in and says, "Why are you doing it that way? That doesn't make any sense." And I'd say, like, "Well, tell me what your idea is," and they'd go off and come back, and it's a better idea. You know, it's an improvement. So it keeps my team, my leadership team, sharp and interactive, and always thinking through the process, and never going to autopilot. Which is a good thing. And I think one of the important things I want to highlight is we educate. I've been educated. Everybody's been educated in such a highly technical way where, when I got out of medical school, my thinking was, how do I make sure I don't hurt anybody? I help everybody. I do the right thing. Like, you don't want to make a mistake, and it's technical. And, you learn the art of medicine, as I wrote in the book, from working with mentors, seeing somebody guide you, and it helps you understand, how do I apply this technical knowledge?
Yes.
So if anything, what we want to do in this next generation of students is make sure they have to be technically sound, right? There's no replacing that, of course, but we want to create mentorship, programmatic approaches that also teach them how the care of the individual, how the touch still matters.
Yeah.
And I talk in the book, the greatest example of healthcare I've seen was a nurse feeding a patient. It wasn't a trauma unit. It wasn't in the ICU. It was simply a nurse feeding a patient. And that's one of the vignettes I share in the book. And it was just remarkable.
Yeah.
The care that she was able to deliver on a busy night with all the technical expertise she had, but it was about mashed potatoes and peas and having that conversation, right?
A lot of times that's what it comes down to. I mean, our whole team at one particular time and not have been out in the community and have had that quote unquote aha moment, or they've had that nurse feeding the patient kind of moment, and have either brought back to a team meeting or a group, or maybe even kind of changed their approach on how they deliver something. Because a lot of times you have to find ways to understand how people receive and understand information. I use this analogy a lot in some of the work that I do, and using the experience of me being a basketball player and a coach, depending on who I'm talking to as a coach, I may can yell at player A, or I may can kind of talk sternly to player B, or maybe I might gotta just, say it in a different way to player C. At the end of the day, we're all on the same team. You just gotta figure out a way to deliver the message, so we all understand it, so we all can win. And there's a way.
Great example.
And there's a way you can win in education. There's a way you can win in research. There's a way you can win in patient synergy, because we're all on the same team. Researchers, patients, caregivers, doctors, experts. Okay, we got it. How can we all come together and deliver something so it makes sense for everyone, so we all can win? And that's not easy all the time.
Well, no, it's really, it's not easy most of the time, I think, but it's so important because it's how you create durable systems that matter, right?
Durable systems that matter.
Because I use the example, imagine if pharma did everything right and we had the best solutions and the best, everything that was produced solved the patient problem, but we didn't have a delivery system that could deliver it effectively and compassionately. Would you call that a great system? I'd say no. But conversely, if you had the best healthcare delivery system, caring and empathetic and all the help that you needed, and every patient that went into the hospital felt cared for, but you had no new treatments, would that be the healthcare system you'd want? I'd say no. This is a connected system that has not been connected before. I'm making this connection.
Yes.
New, the delivery and the creation, but it's connected by patient centricity, the patient focus. That's how we're going to get that done.
I like that a whole lot. And Dr. Yanni, I'm going to end it with my last question when we talk about giving advice, because I looked at your speech again back in your presentation, I would say back in December, and took some notes to myself when we talk about delivery, and we talk about taking advice and how to always improve. What would you give, what type of advice would you give to other pharmaceutical companies or healthcare providers that are looking to adapt to a more patient-centric model of care?
So I think my first piece of advice is accept nothing less than what would be impactful. Too many times there's been compromises made where the companies themselves don't commit fully. So the people they bring in to execute have to compromise so they're not put out of existence. Those days are done. We're at the point right now where we need to make these changes. People are expecting these changes. Regulators and government agencies are going to be asking, how are you more patient-centric? This is the time. Commit to it, and then make sure that when you create the systems, do so in a way that is lean. Don't create empires. Empires will be destroyed over time if they're costly, especially if it's a support function. Create something that's meaningful, that can be measured, and that works for patients, and that will ultimately be a good business investment for the companies. Just think through it and don't accept something less than what's effective, because when you measure that, it will not have a good business outcome. And that's the trap people fall into. And lastly, we are closer than you think. Now is the time.
Like that. Now is the time. Now is the time, not only in this conversation, but now is the time to understand the importance of patient centricity, the message that Astellas, Dr. Yanni and his team is providing in regards to health literacy, educating the pharmaceutical group. I love it. I appreciate it. And I think, again, going back to the synergies, having that patient-centeredness, there's no way you can get around if you say you want to help communities, if you say you want to help those, if you say you want to be impactful, and you cannot not include the patient throughout beginning, during, and then the end.
Amen.
Dr. Yanni, I want to go back to another thing too. There is no shameless plugs when we're talking about health literacy. So do me a favor, and my guests as well, to talk a little bit about your book, where they can get it from, and we will also have it in the bio, in the link.
Thanks, Rodney. I wrote this book basically like a TED Talk. It's a beach read, a plain read. It's meant to be direct. I used my experiences as a physician that taught me the lessons through patient vignettes and then added in how those patient stories help mold my view of patient centricity and how you can do the same thing through the business learnings that I've had shared in the book. So it's a really, if you're a patient, if you're a caregiver, you're going to, I think, enjoy the patient stories and how you can associate with those and what you need. If you're on the delivery or on the solution side, I think it would be a very helpful read to sort of talk to each other and figure out how you can apply it to your own processes. It's meant to share. This is not really, I didn't create this to keep it to myself. I want people to replicate what I've done well. And if you do something better, share it with me and I'm going to do it. So the name of the book is A Bandana and A Bluebird, The Path to a Patient-Centric Healthcare System. It's available on Amazon.
Thank you much, Dr. Yanni. Truly appreciate it. And I know Dr. Mullins and you guys will be in touch. And I look forward to our next encounter.
Thanks so much, Rodney.
Thank you for listening to The Bridge. Your health, your voice. To learn more about the Patients Program, visit our website at www.patients.umaryland.edu.